Hey everyone, and welcome to Iron Sharpens Iron Apologetics. Today we'll be looking at a video by CosmicSkeptic called Morality Can't Be Objective Even If God Exists. Now, if you haven't seen his video, I would recommend checking it out before watching this one because I'm not analyzing everything that he says because his video is a little over 20 minutes long and he does say quite a lot in that 20 minutes of which I do want to respond to, but in this video, my intention is to focus on his two main topics that he speaks on to prove his point that morality is subjective. The two topics are religious morality and God. Now, there's three problems about what he speaks on when it comes to religious morality. The first problem is that when he says religious morality, he's actually talking about religion. But which religion or religions? There are hundreds of thousands of religions, and I don't even know if that includes their denominations or not. So basically, there's a lot, but he doesn't actually address any of them. The second problem is that his rationale for claiming that religious morality is subjective is to focus on people's opinions, feelings, beliefs, views, and intuition on the broad, generalized religious morality, which is absolutely irrational and illogical. You can't conclude that religious morality is subjective simply because of people's subjective views on that topic. Now, the third problem that he clearly overlooked, which actually destroys his whole argument, is that even if I were to grant him that religious morality was either false or subjective, or even go as far as the hypothetical that no religion even exists, it still wouldn't help prove his argument that objective morality doesn't exist. Objective morality is not dependent on religious morality because religions make the claim that their moral standards were revealed to them by God, who is the objective moral standard, which means we can now eliminate the first half of his video. Now, when he speaks about God, he relies heavily on straw man arguments and begging the question and just irrelevant points, which means we can eliminate the second half of his video and we're pretty much left with his intro and outro. But I still have to back up what I just said, so take it away, Alex.
I used to think that the religious were the only ones who could legitimately lay claim to a worldview that does have some room for an objective understanding of morality, but as I've been thinking more about it, I've come to realize that even they, the religious, ultimately, as far as I can see, can't provide an objective basis for morality either. This might surprise you. It seems a given that if there really is a God, morality can easily be shown to be objective. But I honestly don't now think this to be the case, which marks a significant shift in my moral philosophy, since this closed what I previously considered to be the final possible gap in which objective morality could be said to exist. And with that gone, I'm now of the view that all morality, even religious morality, is ultimately subjective.
So disregarding the fact that his statement that it seems a given that if there really is a God, morality can easily be shown to be objective is an absurd claim to make that is illogical. But moving on, because I want to bring to your attention that he changed the goalpost in a matter of 45 seconds. He went from talking about how he no longer believes that religious people are able to provide a basis for objective morality to then concluding that all morality is subjective, even religious morality. Well, which one is it, Alex? Are you talking about religious people's views on objective morality or each religion's claim to objective morality? As you can see here, he's confused as to what to focus on.
So I suppose I would define morality as the intuition that we ought to do that which is good and ought not to do that which is bad. This definition is incredibly broad, of course, but with good reason. The reason is that it can encompass all popular notions of morality, and so we don't need to fall at the first hurdle. For instance, Sam Harris's notion that we ought to do that which brings about well-being, and thinking that well-being is good, is a belief that we ought to do that which is good. It fits our definition. Religious morality, too, fits into it, since the religious feel we ought to do that which God has defined as good. This is why I think this is the best definition of morality to start with, because it's broad enough that we can all agree with it.
Though I agree with what you said about Sam Harris, what you are doing here, Alex, is you're comparing apples and oranges. When you speak about Sam Harris's definition of morality, you refer to Sam Harris. However, when you speak about religious morality, you refer to people's feelings. Not only is that not a fair comparison, but it's not a true representation of the relationship between religious morality and people. Religious morality is not dependent on people's feelings. Granted, it is true that people do misrepresent and/or manipulate the religion they claim to follow in order to do certain actions that people would intuitively view as evil. However, you know full well that one's actions do not necessarily reflect the thing they claim to be or follow. So therefore, based off of your reasoning, no, you are incorrect. Religious morality does not fit within your definition. Instead, it's people's feelings that would fit within your definition.
But now, of course, we run into the problem of defining what we mean by good or bad or ought, since we're using these words in our definition. You might say that these terms need themselves to be independently defined within our broader definition. But the reason I haven't done so is because I believe it's impossible to do so. You'll hopefully understand this by the end of the video, but my whole point here is that the reason morality can't be objective is precisely because good, bad, and ought can't be defined.
Here, he's implying that because people cannot define ought, good, or bad at all or sufficiently enough, that morality then cannot be objective, which again is dependent on people and is coming way out of left field, nothing at all to do with religious morality or God. It's absolutely irrelevant, and a simple answer to his question is that since he allows for the existence of God, then God could do so in his own way.
The moment we attempt to define good, as in to give it a synonym, we necessarily have to presume a particular moral philosophy. I might define good as what God commands, or as what procures well-being, but to do so I would automatically be agreeing with a certain philosophy.
And once again, he is referring to how people define morality, even though objective morality is not reliant on how people define it. Nor does it mean that even if objective morality existed, that people wouldn't be able to still abuse the objective moral standard by manipulating it to do their own thing. So it's all irrelevant.
Note the usage of the word therefore. Dr. Craig says that atheistic morality can vary depending on a person's upbringing, their geographical and social background, their environment, which therefore shows that it's subjective, because it wouldn't be variable if it were objective. So it seems by that logic that if I can show that religious morality can vary in the same way, it too is therefore subjective. And of course, a moment's reflection allows us to realize that religious views too, obviously, vary in exactly the same way. A person's religion is, more often than not, determined by their social and geographical background, just as atheistic morality is.
Ignoring the fact that he had a perfectly good opportunity just now to give an example of religions that were influenced by culture and geographical location, probably because it would end up being relevant to his argument, it still doesn't help his case because, like I said, religious morality does not determine that morality is objective. So he's cornered either way. If he doesn't talk about religious morality, then he's not actually following his own argument, which is clearly what's happening here. If he does speak about religious morality, it's irrelevant and still doesn't prove his argument that morality is subjective. So he has nowhere to go but to abandon his arguments.
Okay, I can already hear the sound of religious objection. Of course religious views vary, but that's not because my religion is only subjectively correct. It still has an objectively true morality. It's just that other people have gotten it wrong and follow a false morality because they feel that their religion is objectively true when it really isn't. My morality is still objective, even if other people have gotten it wrong.
Now, I know people might say that this is a straw man argument, but I'm not concerned about that. I'm more interested in the fact that he is still relying on people's views, feelings, and beliefs.
The only reason that anybody could possibly choose one religious morality as more ethically viable than another is because they feel it provides a better framework for moral truth. How else could a person possibly prove to themselves or to others that one religion has a superior ethical code to another? How else can a Christian possibly believe that the ethical code of Christianity is superior to that of Islam? If you want to compare the ethics of two religions, you need some moral basis on which to judge them. But that moral basis obviously can't be one of the religions, and so the only way that you can decide which religion is morally superior is through a subjective analysis of which you feel is better. It's ultimately a subjective decision based on your, not your religion's, moral intuition.
Alex, are you still talking about people? Look, I can't keep up with you here with the amount of times you continue to focus on people and not religion. So here's what I'm going to do to make things easier. I'm going to just let you speak and put up a counter to count how many times you do it, because it's at this point that you load up in order to get ready to just unload a whole clip filled with people's feelings, beliefs, views, opinions, intuition, etc. But you end up totally missing the target every time because you're not even shooting in the right direction. So let's put up the counter and see how many bullets you fire off.
But still, and interestingly, something tells me that Dr. Craig wouldn't accuse, say, a Muslim of having subjective morality, even though he thinks that their morality is objectively false. The religious point the finger at atheism for having subjective morality, but not at other religions. What's the difference in a Christian's eyes between atheistic morality and Islamic morality? What makes one able to claim that their morality is objective, but the other not? Clearly, neither can actually be objectively true, according to the Christian, so the only difference is that the Muslim believes their morality to be objective, even though it isn't, according to the Christian, whereas the atheist doesn't. The only thing that seems to distinguish religious morality from atheistic morality, even according to the religious here, is that the religious believer feels like their morality is objective, whereas the atheist recognizes the subjectivity lying at the heart of ethical decision-making. The reason that Craig wouldn't accuse a Muslim of subjective morality is therefore not because their morality is objective, which he obviously doesn't believe, but because they feel that it's objective and treat it as though it's such. Therefore, we can see that the religious claim to objective moral values is ultimately based on two things: a subjective recognition of the superiority of a person's particular religion, and the feeling...
See, I told you it was a lot. I mean, he got trigger happy near the end there, but that was an onslaught. But, oh well, moving on. Now listen, here's what he's about to do. He's about to change his focus from religious morality to God. He presents some hypotheticals and allows for the existence of God and how God defines good and bad, and as such we can objectively conclude what we ought or ought not do objectively. And from there, he brings forth this question. Let's have a listen.
Here's the single question that completely changed the way that I view religious morality. Why ought we do that which is good? Of course, it seems stupidly obvious and absolutely instinctive that we ought to do what's good. Of course we ought to do what's good. You still need to demonstrate objectively that because something is good, we ought to do it, and because something is bad, we ought not do it.
No, not really. I don't have to prove that. And why do we have to do what's good? I'm a Christian asking an atheist why we ought to do that which is good. I disagree with that statement. You would have to prove that point in order to justify that claim, but that's impossible. All this is irrelevant. Furthermore, even though we aren't obligated to do anything, that doesn't therefore mean that morality is then subjective. Now, if you are speaking about obligation, then there are two answers. The first answer is simple. You aren't obligated to do anything. And the second answer is the only reason anyone would have to do anything moral would be based on their own preferred goal. For example, if I want to go to heaven, then I ought to do that which is good and avoid that which is bad. If I want to go to hell, I ought to do that which is evil. If I don't want to go to jail, it's pretty much the same thing. If I want to avoid someone seeking revenge on me, I ought to do that which is good rather than evil. In this case, it's all based on the person's goal. But without that goal, there's nothing to justify that we ought to do anything, whether it's in regards to morality or something else. Now, he continues to go on assuming that we ought to do that which is good, and bases his whole argument on this false premise, and doesn't actually provide any justification for that claim, so I'm skipping over all of that.
Now, the religious might respond that of course we can prove that we ought to do that which is good, because God commands us to do that which is good.
Now, this is a clear straw man argument that I can't ignore. First off, no. No religious person can prove using logic or their texts that we ought to do that which God commands. Like I said previously, we are not obligated to do anything unless it's a personal goal, like following God's commands, for example. I am a Christian, and I can provide thousands of examples from Genesis to Revelation of generations of people disobeying God's commands for the simple fact that we have free will. So bringing this up is a straw man argument that is once again reliant on hypothetical opinions of people rather than an unbiased analysis of a specific religion. It also shows his lack of knowledge as to what religions teach, and this clearly demonstrates that his approach is flawed and just doesn't work.
Thus, if it means anything, religious morality is subjective.
Nope, not at all. You did not at any point prove that religious morality is subjective. All you've done is shown us that people's opinions, views, beliefs in something, intuition, feelings, etc. are subjective. But we already knew that.
So that's my coverage of religious morality.
A for effort, Alex. A for effort. Well, thanks for watching and hope you enjoyed the video and learned something or were encouraged at all. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video. And Alex, if you end up watching this video and want to chat, send me a message. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.